Yes. Yesterday we were talking about the mechanism of action of the aminoglycosides and also the structure activity relationship of the aminoglycoside antibiotics. So already we have learned that there is a class of these antibiotics have different the examples starting from the what we call as the narrow spectrum aminoglycosides, then extended spectrum and broad spectrum aminoglycosides are concerned. So now today we will discuss about the antibacterial spectrum of this particular amino acids are concerned. And as you very well know that these drugs are effective only on the gram-negative bacteria. That's why they may be called as the narrow spectrum antimicrobial agent. So the classical example of this one is the streptomycin, dihydrostreptomycin are the first generation agent. Whereas especially these are very effective against the gram-negative microorganisms are concerned. Whereas the broad spectrum antimicrobial agent, they contain the neomycin and kanamycin and also the gram-negative and gram-positive bacteria. But the Pseudomonas aeruginosa is not affected by these particular agents. Whereas the extended spectrum aminoglycoside causes the antibacterial spectra that is similar to that of the broad spectrum antibiotics plus the Pseudomonas aeruginosa and varieties of this aerobic bacteria. They are not effective against the anaerobic bacteria. So the anaerobic bacteria are only moderately sensitive to these amino acids these aminoglycosides are concerned. Whereas the aminoglycosides are mostly ineffective against the fungi and virus. So these drugs are effective only against the microbes. That's also more towards the gram-negative than aerobes, not against the anaerobes. That's the spectrum of the activity of these particular drugs are concerned. Whereas the bacterial resistance, as you know very well, in the earlier classes also we have discussed how the bacterial resistance comes. So it also comes by the different mechanisms which are already dealt in the general resistance mechanism. So the resistance may be plasmid mediated or acquired or by the mutation. Plasmid mediated means it is transferred from one bacteria to another bacteria, or it may be acquired by the mutation, the changed gene sequence, which is resistance gene. The bacteria which is incorporated the resistant gene may also transmit the resistance from one bacterial culture to the another thing. So what are all the modes of the resistance are? There are, as usual, the inactivating number of enzymes are number one. Of course, these are also present in case of the penicillinase, cephalosporinase, and also in the macrolides or amphenicols. All these are inactivated by the enzymes which are secreted by these particular bacteria. And second one is the impaired transport system of the antimicrobial agent inside the bacterial cell. So that's one thing. Whereas the alteration in ribosomal structure. So here you know that these bacteria are having 50S and 30S subunits, whereas the aminoglycosides are going to bind with that of the 30S subunit. And this particular binding set, especially on the ribosome, will be totally changed. That's why these are the three mechanisms. Number one, the inactivating enzymes. Two, impaired transport inside the bacteria. So if it is not transported inside the bacteria, maybe due to the active transport or the passive transport, the microbial organisms cannot be killed at all. So the third one is the alteration in the ribosomal structure, so that the antibiotic cannot be bind with the target site, and hence the resistance will come. Whereas the inactivating enzymes, let us discuss about the inactivating enzymes. So what are all these things? We know that the beta-lactamase enzyme is, or the penicillinase is secreted from the penicillin resistant bacteria. Also the cephalosporinase and many more this thing, especially the inactivating enzymes. So this is produced by the periplasm of the bacteria and the transferase enzymes like the amino glycosyl acetyl transferase. That's why this is the drugs are inactivated by these enzymes. Number one, aminoglycosyl acetyl transferase. That's the first enzyme. Whereas the another enzyme which prevents this antibiotic to get active is aminoglycosyl nucleotidyl transferase. That's the another enzyme. Whereas the third one is the aminoglycosyl phosphotransferase. So these are the three important enzymes that are secreted from the bacteria in response to the drug entrance. So the number one is the name suggests the acetyl transferase means it is transferring the acetyl enzyme, so that the acetyl enzyme, acetyl moiety in a particular antibiotic will be changed so that its antibacterial property will be lost. The same thing applies to the others also, and these transferases are the catalase conjugation of specific hydroxyl or amide groups with the acetyl, adenyl, and phosphorus groups to inactivate the antibiotic. So these are the common groups which are present on the antimicrobial drug, especially aminoglycoside, the acetyl group, adenyl group, and phosphorus groups. And this will be inactivated by the enzyme which is secreted by the bacteria. So the conjugated aminoglycosides first compete with parent drug for transport into the prey plasma. So the bacteria is such a clever guy that it is going to bind with that of, especially these enzymes are going to bind with that of the antibacterial drug, and they will compete with the regular antibiotic. The complex of this enzyme, aminoglycosyl acetyl transferase plus an antibiotic, maybe amikacin, gentamicin, etc. So this will compete with the regular gentamicin sulfate for the site, especially in entry inside the bacteria, or they get inactivated. So once cytoplasm, in the cytoplasm, they do not allow binding of the parent drug to the ribosome. So all these are created by the bacteria for their survival. So you may be knowing the thing that the survival of the fittest. So the bacteria will try to remain in the environment as much as possible by varieties of this mechanism. It will also fight for the last breath because it need to survive and propagate its small bacteria, some small bacteria or offsprings into the next generation. So it will prepare the next generation in such a way that they should not be destroyed with the aminoglycosides. So that is the mechanism behind the particular antibacterial resistance is concerned. So these are all the enzymes. They will secrete some and they will break down the structure. Then, so this is the mechanism, general mechanism, how the antibiotics are destroyed and the bacteria will gain resistance. So already we have dealt this. So the number one is whereas the aminoglycoside cannot be transported inside the bacterial cell wall. That's the mechanism, the first mechanism, and then it need to enter inside the bacterial cell to bind with that of the bacterial ribosomes. So this is not at all possible by the particular bacteria. Whereas the another mechanism is also the thing is the binding site, especially on the bacteria, they will be altered so that the antimicrobial drugs cannot bind with that of the particular site and act accordingly, and it will bind with that of the ribosome and required protein is not synthesis. This process itself will be inhibited here. So the normal ribosome inhibition will be there, and apart from this one, there are the efflux pumps are there which will put the antibacterial drug out of the cell. So these are the ways, or the cell membrane modification will be done. So here, suppose this is the poron channels. Here, this antibiotic drug need to pass by this membrane, but there the structure totally it will be changed. The porine size, structures, and the enzyme, totally it will be changed. So that the drug cannot enter inside the bacterial cell wall, and also the influx mechanism will not also work, whereas the conversion, especially the binding sites, will be inactivated, and also the efflux pumps will be very functional in case of bacteria, and they will put all the antibiotic drug out of the cell of the bacteria. That's one thing. Whereas another major thing is the bacteria, entire bacteria is going to produce the varieties of the enzymes which are going to deactivate the aminoglycosides. So this is the way how the bacteria gain the resistance to the aminoglycosides are concerned. So here also you can see the same thing. Aminoglycoside transport in gram-negative bacteria is done by another mechanism. There is a influx of the aminoglycosides. It occurs through the bacterial cell membrane because these drugs are hydrophilic porine channels, especially on the bacterial membrane. This is the outer cell membrane. This is the periplasm, then inner membrane, or sometimes it's also called as the cell wall also. So here the porine channels are there, and through which the antibacterial drug enters inside the bacterial cell and go and act on the particular site, especially the aminoglycoside binding site. And efflux of the aminoglycosides may occur through active transport pumps, such as the R&D type efflux pump. This is a efflux pump. So whenever the antibacterial drug is tried to enter inside the cell and act on the ribosomes, immediately this pump is going to be activated and the drug will be put out of the bacteria. That's how it is. The resistance mechanisms are dealt here. And the conjugated aminoglycosides also incapable of enhancing the active transport and the altered drug. So the aminos, especially the aminoglycosides, are conjugated with that of the bacterial secreted substance and unable to enter inside the cell. And these inactivating enzymes are acquired by specific bacteria, especially main by conjugation and transfer of the plasmid. So here the plasmid transplantation from one bacteria to another with a bridge in between two cells, and the donor recipient bacteria becomes the resistant bacteria carrying the resistant genes, and the susceptibility of the aminoglycosides to specific transferase enzyme is quite variable, and it provides the difference in the susceptibility pattern. That means the different aminoglycosides have different type of the susceptibility, so all are not equal. And some of these aminoglycosides, such as amikacin, are relatively resistant to the inactivating enzymes are concerned. So the reason being is the chemical modifications. It's not easy, especially in case of the amikacin is concerned. Whereas the other things, the bacteria can modify the chemical structures using the different enzymes. And another mechanism how the bacteria gain resistance to aminoglycoside is there will be impaired transport of the antimicrobial agents inside the cell wall or membrane. So this may occur either due to the change in the pores, as we have already depicted that in the earlier pictures. That's this thing. This is the pores. Pores are there. Then what happens is, so porine size, especially the change in the porine size will occur. That is one of the important mechanism how the antibiotics are cannot enter the bacterial cell and act on the particular receptor. So they become less permeable to antibiotics or due to alteration in the active transport system in the cell membrane. Both will happen. And there will be interference with aminoglycoside transport to microbial cytoplasm and is mediated by the plasmids, but it's a lesser important process, especially this plasmid mediated. This process is somehow not so important, whereas the Pseudomonas, which develop the resistance against the aminoglycosides, so they are acting in a different manner, that they will be deficient in the antibiotic induced phase 2 active transport. So Pseudomonas aeruginosa, which are highly resistant microorganisms, they develop resistance to aminoglycosides, and they are deficient in the antibiotic induced phase 2 active transport. So this is not there. Hence, the anaerobes are inherently resistant because non-functional energy dependent carrier system. So the anaerobes have got the non-functional energy dependent carrier system. So the energy dependent carrier system is not activated in case of the anaerobic, because the activated transport system always do require the oxygen, especially for the active uptake. So that's why these anaerobes do lack the oxygen, hence they are resistant to the antibiotics are concerned. Then the alteration in the third action, that's the alteration on the bacterial ribosomal structures. Especially this occurs, the alteration in the ribosomal structure can confer higher degree of the resistance. So then decreasing the binding of the aminoglycosides with the target receptor. These are very, very simple, because you simply remember that the binding site of the aminoglycosides in the bacteria will be changed, and hence they cannot cause the death of the bacteria. So, but this mechanism is not so important. So it's a limited scope, whereas the first and second one are very important. That's the entering the bacterial cell, and also the particularly the enzymes are secreted. These are two important things, main important things, or main things that contribute majorly to the bacterial resistance. And some strains of E. coli acquire resistance to streptomycin via one-step mutation. So, you know, in the initial classes only, I have told about the different modes of the bacterial resistance. Here, the one-step mutation occurs, which alters binding sites of the edges to the ribosomes. So, in the one-step mutation, the aminoglycosides cannot bind to the ribosomes, because the structure where the aminoglycosides are going to bind itself will be changed. Hence, the antibiotic becomes the helpless. And here also the much more mechanisms are dealt, especially the resistant mechanisms against the aminoglycoside antibiotic. So there are three types of the resistance in detail, especially the intrinsic resistance, then adaptive resistance, then acquired resistance. So these are the three types of the resistance that happens especially to the aminoglycoside agents. The first one is the ribosomal mutation. It will be induced by the intrinsic resistance. So ribosomal modification will also be there. Then antibiotic modifying enzymes will be secreted. Change in the membrane permeability to the antimicrobial agent will be there. And apart from this one, the efflux pumps will be activated, so that the more and more aminoglycosides accumulate inside the bacterial cell, they will be immediately pumped out before entering the cytoplasm. And there are varieties of the membrane proteases are there. They are going to inhibit this antibiotic is concerned. Whereas the adaptive resistance is they will adapt the environment in such a way that they will form the biofilm. So biofilm means, just imagine that it is a coat over the bacteria by its own materials. So this is one of the recently the biofilm especially is becoming very important, especially in case of Staph aureus and also the E. coli. And persister cells, the physiological changes will also occur. Then swarming motility will also be there, especially the antibacterial drug. Whereas the acquired resistance will be by the chromosomal mutation, then there will be gene mutation, then uptake of the resistance gene is also important. Whereas the uptake of the resistant plasmid is another thing. All these will contribute to the total resistance of the bacterial material to the antibiotics, aminoglycosides, antibiotics. So this is the pharmacokinetics of the aminoglycosides. They are very similar in most of the veterinary species. So we are going to deal this thing, and they, in general, the absorption pattern of the antimicrobial agents, especially to the antimicrobial agent, is very, very less, especially through the gastrointestinal tract. Whereas the GIT absorption takes place only in presence of the inflammation or ulceration. If the mucous membrane is abraded, especially in the stomach, then only these are going to be absorbed. So the inherently the aminoglycosides are quaternary ammonium compounds because they have got the charge and they are water soluble. So remember that the aminoglycosides have the property of the water solubility, and also they have got certain charges which hinders them for the absorption through oral route. Whereas the gastrointestinal tract absorption takes place only in presence of the inflammation or ulcers. So that should be the criteria for entering this particular antibiotics inside the bacterial cell. So especially in case of very young animals and which are on the cholesterol, they can absorb if the inflammation is there, especially in the stomach. And the unabsorbed antibiotics, especially from the gastrointestinal tract, are excreted in the feces without any inactivation, because the intestinal microflora are not going to change the aminoglycosides. And this is used in the bacterial cleansing of intestine prior to surgery. So what it is adopted is certain antibacterials like caramycin and torbamycin. They are used especially in the gastrointestinal surgery. Suppose there is a end-to-end anastomosis in case of the operations which are involved, there is a choke of the intestine, then the both end of the healthy intestine need to be tied together. So in this situation, a lot of seepage of the microbial content will be present in the abdominal cavity. So because of this thing, especially in the intestines, need to be whereas sterile. Hence, we are going to administer certain antimicrobial agents for cleansing the intestine. And especially during the GIT surgery, most of the drugs used are the aminoglycosides. So the kinetics pattern is just like as usual in the earlier drugs. As the time go on increasing, there is a decreased pattern of the antimicrobial concentrations in the blood, especially. So as the time increases, there is a peak plasma concentration here. Then it becomes almost all zero at 14 hours duration of the time. Then absorption from the IM site is very rapid when compared to your macrolides. So they are not absorbed properly because they are highly lipid soluble in substance. So we need some of the important solvents. Whereas this drug is going to dissolve in the water, distilled water, and the absorption through the intramuscular route will be very fast. So the peak plasma concentration or the maximum concentration of the antibiotic, suppose you are administering a 500 milligram, then the concentration, especially should be there in the body plasma, is about, it will be 30 to 45 minutes of the administration, especially the intramuscular route. And absorption of the subcutaneous site may be protracted because it's a question mark whether these antibiotics will be absorbed from the subcutaneous site. Yes, of course, many, especially chloramphenicol or the other drugs, they are going to be transported from the serosal surface of the body and get absorbed into the circulation. Yes, these are the predictors of the bacterial eradication with the pharmacokinetic and pharmacodynamic of the, especially ಏನಪ್ಪ ಸತ್ಯ ಊಟ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೀಯಾ? So antibacterial pattern and the absorption, distribution, metabolism are like this. Initially they will be absorbed and peak as usual in the other drugs, then they will be declined down, and this is the minimal inhibitory concentration. At this particular stage it will be reached, maybe after 5 or 10 minutes it may reach, and this is the area under curve, means the excretion phase is there under the total kinetics equation here. Then the distribution of this antimicrobial drug, especially in the extracellular fluid, it is extensively distributed, extracellular fluid, but do not readily enter the cell of the bacteria due to their polar nature. Polar means it's water soluble, non-polar means not water insoluble, and they are solvent soluble. So these are largely excluded from the brain, cerebrospinal fluid, eye, and most body tissues except the kidneys and inner ear. So the concentration of this antibiotic, especially in the other tissues like the brain, cerebrospinal fluid, eye, and most body tissues, will not be proper. When the kidneys and the inner ear and also the other organs, which are highly perfused organs, they will get more and more antibiotic. So they accumulate in high concentration in the renal tubular cells. Especially the renal tubular cells have got lot of affinity towards hindering or storing the aminoglycoside antibiotics, and the endolymph and perilymph of the ear, especially the antibacterial drug is accumulated and having the deleterious effect. Whereas these are accumulating inside the renal tubular cells and also the perilymph of endolymph. It is by active process that usually contributes to the nephrotoxicity and ototoxicity respectively. So you should never forget that the aminoglycoside antibiotics do have the, especially the oto and nephrotoxicity. Of course, the neuromuscular blocking action is also there, but it is somehow rare. So oto means the ear, nephro means kidney. So the toxicity will be in these organs will be affected, especially there will be degeneration of renal tubules and also the hearing impairment. So these are the two important mechanisms, especially in case of pregnant animal. Suppose you want to, there is a farmer has brought one case, and yes, you need to administer it the aminoglycoside. Is it safe, especially in the pregnant animals, or it will cross the barriers, especially the placental barriers, and act on the fetus? Yes, true. It may cross the placental barrier and reach fetal plasma and amniotic fluid, and it may cause the deafness in the young ones. So if in the advanced stage of the pregnancy, a known drug should be used, or you should avoid as much as the drugs are concerned. But we do not know what is the pharmacokinetics of every drug, and the data is also not available sometimes. So the binding property is less than 20% to the plasma proteins, and the volume of the distribution is directly proportional to the volume of the extracellular fluid. Usually the aminoglycoside antibiotics cannot enter inside the cell, whereas they enter the bacterial cell by the active transport, especially the placental barrier, and cause the ototoxicity in case of the young ones. Coming to the biotransformation and the excretion or the fate of these antibacterial drugs is especially these drugs are not metabolized in the body and are excreted largely as such. Of course, it is 90%. We have seen that especially the penicillin G is excreted to the extent of 99%. So these are also secreted to the greatest extent, especially in the kidneys, and that's why it becomes the drug of choice for the bacterial induced or the resistance mechanisms, especially. So the deposition varies among the animals because the glomerular filtration rate will be different from one to the another animal. So the plasma T half of the aminoglycoside are similar, and that's 2 to 4 hours. There will be always a big range is there. With the normal kidney function, whether they take the double time to get excreted out of the body, that's why the T half is 24 to 48 hours. Whereas in the other antibiotic, we are not dealt any such thing because the auto or the nephrotoxicity is not so important there. And the disposition varieties among animals become of because of the difference in the glomerular filtration rate. That's also abbreviated as the GFR or glomerular filtration rate. So the clearance can also depend on the volume of the distribution. So the volume of the distribution means in how much quantity of volume of body fluids the antibiotic is dissolved. So this is especially about the volume of the distribution. Then the clearance of these antibiotic depends upon the varieties of the factors, especially the neonates have relatively more volume of the extracellular fluid, whereas the blood levels are relatively low and the renal clearance of the aminoglycoside is very, very less, especially in the neonates. Whereas there is a contrast or the contradicting statement here that the dehydration reduced the volume of extracellular fluids with high blood concentrations, and this results in the increased renal clearance of the aminoglycosides. So there is, if the person has not taken sufficient fluids before the administration of the antimicrobial agents, then the reduces the volume of extracellular fluids with high blood concentration, resulting in the increased renal excretion of the amino acid antibiotic. So there are varieties of the side effects of these enzymes. Already we have learned that ototoxicity, nephrotoxicity, and also the other type of the toxicity, GI toxicity, etc. So these are all there, and all ages have potential to produce toxic effects, but the relative property is totally different, especially the different mechanism of actions are there. Whereas the important adverse effects of the aminoglycosides, number 3 are there. Number 1 is the nephrotoxicity, especially on the kidney. Then second, not so important one, is the ototoxicity. Whereas the another surprising thing is that the neuromuscular blockade is the characteristic of this particular antibiotic class. So first nephrotoxicity, then ototoxicity, then also the neuromuscular block will be present. Hence, the side effects will be exhibited by certain animals. So here is a cartoon that you can see that the kidneys, they have got the antimicrobial agents. Then if it is resistance, then it is the antibiotic will try to gain the kill antimicrobial drug, whereas in case of ears, also sufficient concentration of the antibiotic like amikacin, it will be accumulated. That's how the concentration varies here. Then the major toxic effects of aminoglycosides is explained by here. That is, there will be a fighting between that of the aminoglycoside and also the microorganisms, and this will continue especially in the ear or also in the case of kidneys, because lot of the antibiotic is stored inside these organs and cause the toxicity. Whereas nephrotoxicity, yes, it is dealt in detail little. The occurs as a result of their progressive accumulation. That is also 40 to 50 times the level, especially in the blood. And this is by the proximal tubular cells, especially which are present in the kidney. The aminoglycosides are positively charged agents. Positively, as usual, you have seen that these are positive charged agents and they get attracted to very charged polypeptides of the renal membrane. So that's why it is going to attract, especially aminoglycoside is going to attract the gram-negative things, especially from the brain, etc. So what happens is the transport is directly related to the membrane content of the phosphatidyl inositol or phosphatidyl inositol transphosphate, which high in renal cortex and the cochlear tissues. So the renal tissues and the cochlear tissues will get accumulated. So here also you can see that there is a graph which is indicating the serum and renal cortical concentration of the aminoglycoside. Here is there is the effect of the saturable uptake on the kidney cortical administration in single daily versus, especially this is single daily versus 3 times. So daily dosing in these times and the daily dosing which is shown in the red here, in the especially this will be like this particular pattern which is shown in the figure. So in 3 times in the especially yes, the aminoglycosides enter inside the renal cortex and this threshold is exceeded the single daily dose which is shown in the particular figure in the green mark, this thing marking. Whereas the antibiotics does not contribute to the renal uptake. Thus, the area below the threshold contributes to the renal uptake, especially the green area, what is present. This is the green area. And the kinetic pattern is also differing with different antimicrobial agents. And please see that most 99% of the aminoglycoside antibiotics are not administered through oral route. Then the interaction of the anti-aminoglycosides with membrane is enhanced by the acidic pH because these are having the alkaline pH. So the acidic drugs will get this accumulated in the acidic drug, this alkaline solution to the greater extent, and they can inhibit various essential enzymes like the phospholipase, then sphingomyelinase, and also the another enzyme that is ATPase. And inhibition of the phospholipase in particular result in the reduced synthesis of the prostaglandins, diacylglycerin, and inositol triphosphate. So by inhibition of the phospholipase enzyme, it results in reduced synthesis of the prostaglandins and also the inositol triphosphate. as prostaglandins play the important role in the regulation of the renal blood flow, in the renal pharmacology, we have dealt it in detail. So these are going to govern especially the concentration of the antibiotic, especially that is synthesis has direct effect on the glomerular filtration. Whereas in case of the nephrotoxicity produced by aminoglycoside, it is reversible in the initial stages. So it will be reversible stages only in the initial stages, but as the time passes, it is irreversible. So the heat here, what happens is there is tubular secretion and the reabsorption takes place. So the mechanism is regeneration property of the tubular epithelium, they will be regenerated. Then on prolonged exposure to the aminoglycosides causes the damage which are having the deleterious effect on the host. This should not be the property of an antibiotic. So ideally, it should have the similar pH to that of the system and should not be the substrate of the presence of the enzyme, especially the brush border of the urine, then proteinuria, then presence of the casts and lower glomerular filtration rate. So because of this thing, how you can recognize that the animal is substancing from the toxicity is there is a presence of the enzymes of brush border in the urine, then the proteinuria will be present, then there will be certain casts, CASTS. So these are going to affect the antimicrobial drug. Later, the stages, this collecting, the ducts lose ability to concentrate urine in response to hormone, especially the anti-diuretic hormone that you know very well. We have dealt with this thing in the earlier class also. Mostly. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, no problem. So how we can collect the information about the toxicity of these substances is the collecting dust lose the ability, especially the histopathology you can see, to concentrate the urine, especially in response to the anti-diuretic hormone. Because of this thing, there will be polyuria, means more and more urine production will be present. So among the aminoglycoside, neomycin is the most nephrotoxic, followed by the tobramycin and the gentamicin, whereas the dihydrostreptomycin is least nephrotoxic among all the drugs. All the other members of the aminoglycoside antibody. Yes. So the toxicity is like in this order, particularly the neomycin is more toxic when compared to the tobramycin. Then tobramycin is more toxic than gentamicin. Then gentamicin is more toxic than that of the dihydrostreptomycin. Means dihydrostreptomycin is least toxic, whereas neomycin is highly nephrotoxic in substance. Yes, the nephrotoxicity of the aminoglycosides can be prevented or minimized by avoiding the use of the potentially nephrotoxic amino acids like the neomycin and ensure adequate hydration. Means one need to drink lot of water, especially after consumption of the after injection, especially they are given as the injection. Sufficient hydration should be given, and avoiding concurrent use of the other nephrotoxic drug like the cephalosporins. They are also nephrotoxic, and also some of the cephalosporins and amphenicols. They are also having the nephrotoxic property. So it becomes the additional burden to the body. Then so the ototoxicity, that's about the nephrotoxicity, which we see here. The cells of this kidney, especially the nephrons, will accumulate a lot of aminoglycosides, and inside there is degeneration changes. Whereas the ototoxicity, so they can produce both the vestibular and auditory functions, especially aminoglycosides, both one. So vestibular and auditory functions, and they get accumulated in the perilymph and endolymph of the inner ear in a dose or time dependent manner. So this is the vestibular structures and auditory structure. They are the present anyway. The accumulated into the perilymph and endolymph, especially in the ear, and this is very much required for the balancing of the body, apart from the hearing. So once accumulated, their elimination from these fluids is very, very slow, and ototoxicity is high when plasma concentration is persistently high. And once ototoxicity occurred, usually it is irreversible, whereas sometimes the nephrotoxicity is reversible in the very, very early stages. And results from the progressive destruction of vestibular or cochlear sensory cells, especially on the nerve cells, the vestibular cells or the cochlear cells, they get the destruction. So that's how the person cannot hear, and also there is a balancing impairment. And the vestibular injury leads to the nystagmus, means the incoordination, the rolling up of the eyeballs, the vertigo, means you know what is a vertigo means, the imbalance, then head tilt ataxia will be present. The animal will be tilting the head and there will be ataxia, and lot of the writing reflex, especially the animals. So what is a writing reflex? So if you put the animal on one side or on the flank region, then automatically sometimes after a few times it will change it to the another side. That's called as the writing reflex. Means if you put the animal in one side, it will get up and shift it to the other side. So this reflex will be absent, especially in case of the ototoxicity. So this is also one of the important thing, because the balancing mechanism, especially in the ear, will be totally lost. And hearing loss in this diagram, it is varieties of the problems like the wax impaction, then foreign bodies and external otitis is present. Whereas in the aminoglycoside toxicity, there is totally the endolymph and perilymph, the sensory organs, especially the sensory nerves, they get damaged. So that there will be the continuous hearing loss occurs, especially in the inner ear, and some sound may heard but cannot be correctly interpreted. Means there is be a hissing sound, or sometimes the person cannot hear at all. Total deafness may also be present. So the hearing impairments or deafness may be pronounced by the permanent damage and loss of the hair cells, especially in the ear, not the hair and organ of the corti. And the aminoglycoside should not be instilled into ear unless the tympanic membrane is intact. So don't use any eye drop which is containing the gentamicin or any other derivatives, and don't put it inside the ear. So you should see the label very carefully. And the eye drops containing the aminoglycoside antibiotic should never be instilled in the eye, because we do not know whether the tympanic membrane is intact or not. So because if you administer the inner ear could cause the potential damage may occur. Whereas the streptomycin is most vestibulotoxic, followed by the gentamicin. Whereas neomycin is highly toxic, followed by the streptomycin, least toxic. So remember this particular thing. Streptomycin is most vestibular toxic, followed by the gentamicin. Then the cats are more susceptible to ototoxic effect of the aminoglycosides, whereas the dogs, and especially one need to be very careful while administering these drugs, especially in case of dogs and cats, in a special reference to the dogs, because many times they will be suffering from the kidney failure, maybe due to the leptospirosis or maybe due to the some other causes. And impaired renal function increases the chance of the ototoxicity, because through the kidney these drugs cannot be excreted properly. So the body concentration of the aminoglycosides will be higher. That's why more and more ototoxicity will be present if the kidney is damaged. Then the major side effects of the aminoglycosides are, as usual, the ototoxicity versus this nephrotoxicity, and different antimicrobial agents cause the both thing. So there is called as the ear poisoning. It's also called as the damages as a person's inner ear or the auditory. He becomes deaf, he or she or it becomes the deaf, and this damage is permanent, not at all reversible. Whereas the kidney toxicity, usually it's reversible upon discontinuation of the medicine, because kidney is having such structures. Whereas the symptoms of kidney toxicity may not be noticeable, especially from the external, without examining the serum creatinine and burn. It's very difficult to assess the nephrotoxicity. Whereas the ototoxicity can be easily diagnosed, because the wobbling gait of the animal and not adhering to your commands, and also the writing reflex is absent. So all these things will be recognized easily by the external examination of the animals. So this is a role of the inflammation in amplification of the tubular, glomerular, and vascular effects. So especially the after administration of the gentamicin for a prolonged period in high dose, so the platelet activating factor, then especially in the pro-inflammatory kinase, especially this reactive oxygen species, as then the toll-like receptors, especially they are responsible for the toxicity of the gentamicin. So the amplification of tubular and glomerular and vesicular will be present. Here you can see that the tubular cell will get affected by the gentamicin, by the activation of reactive oxygen species. So, and also the toll-like receptors are present, and it will be bind, and there will be necrosis of the tubular cell occurs. Whereas the others like the pro-inflammatory cytokinins, like the cytokine 1 and 2, and the TLRs, like toll-like receptors, they get bonded with that of the aminoglycosides. Then there will be what you call as the vasoconstriction and reduced blood flow and reduced oxygen supply to the renal cells, and they are going to apoptosis or die. So this is the mechanism how they are going to cause the damage to the kidney. And here there is a another reference article, which the gentamicin, how it's entered the tubular cell via the multi-ligand receptors. Especially there should be some receptors to enter inside the bacterial cells, which is very much required. Then they are going to come inside the bacterial cell and process the retrograde manner via the lysosomes and Golgi endoplasmic reticulum into the cytoplasm. then they will come complex with iron, which catalyze the formation of the reactive oxygen species or ROS. So in the lysosomes, gentamicin cause the release of the pro-apoptotic and these cathepsins, and in the endoplasmic reticulum, gentamicin causes the pro-apoptotic stress, especially in the mitochondria, and cytosolic gentamicin directly or indirectly are also why this ROS causes the release of cytochrome C from the mitochondria. Here, cytochrome C from the mitochondria will act, and ultimately the sum of the action is they are going to cause the nephrotoxicity. So here especially the gentamicin, if it is administered, then it is entering the cytosol of the cell of the nephrons, then there will be formation of the complex. Then because of this thing, there is a production of the ROS or reactive oxygen species, then it will act and hamper the nucleus of the bacteria. Then the neuromuscular blockade, how it is found means all the aminoglycosides have potential to produce the neuromuscular blockade with Curare-like action. Already we have studied the Curare because it is a competitive neuromuscular blocking action, and there is immobility. So just after the administration of antibiotic aminoglycoside, the animal is unable to move. This is called as the neuromuscular blocking activity. So this is produced by interfering with acetylcholine release from the motor nerve ending, probably by the antagonism of the calcium channels that is normally required for the exocytosis. So the acetylcholine is not released in this condition. Hence, the neurotransmitter will never occur, especially neurohumoral transmission. And hence, the decrease in the sensitivity of the postsynaptic sites to the neuromuscular neurotransmitter acetylcholine has also been there. And NMB or the neuromuscular blockade usually occurs after IV or IP administration of the gentamicin, amikacin, or whatever it may be, but can also be seen with other routes of the administration. Of course, oral route is not there. If you administer the fast IV injection, then definitely it is going to cause the immobilization of the animals. So neuromuscular blocking is not manifested ordinarily in normal clinical use of the drugs unless you are given very high dose or very fast IV injection. So concomitant administration of the neuroblocking agents and general anesthetics, the AGs may sustainably increase the risk of the neuromuscular blocking agents. And apart from this one, muscular weakness, apnea, respiratory arrest, etc., have been associated with the AGs, particularly when they are used in very high doses. The neomycin, streptomycin have high propensity to cause NMB. So these are especially the streptomycin is very commonly used drug, and many times we find that the animal is unable to move after the administration of the injection. And also the kanamycin, amikacin, and gentamicin. Tobramycin is least this neuromuscular blocking action, and this is suppose there is a toxicity that animal, the owner says, yes, you are given some injection, doctor, my animal is not able to move, means you have to immediately treat the animal with the IV calcium borogluconate or the neostigmine, it's a acetylcholinesterase inhibitor. So the other effects, they have got low propensity to cause allergic reaction. Of course, it is rare. Administration of the aminoglycoside may produce peripheral neuritis and dysfunction of the optic nerve. So contraindications, as usual, they are not indicated, especially in case of hypersensitive animal, and should be used with extra caution with the pre-existing diseases, and dosage rates should be reduced, especially in renal function. And once in a while, you have to, several times you have to estimate the serum creatinine concentration. And neonate, geriatric, and obese patients. So this should be reduced, and dose may be increased in animals with edema, ascites, or the heterothorax. So the aminoglycosides acid may impair in neuromuscular transmission and so are not to be given with the myasthenia gravis, of course, a very rare disease, Amitabh Bachchan disease, and should not be given with working dogs, especially the guide dogs. So due to their adverse effect, especially the hearing impairment may be there, and they should not be used during pregnancy because it will pass the placental barrier. And in general, they should be reserved for severe gram-negative infections and should be used only when it is useful, especially in the urinary tract infections. And renal function and plasma, the aminoglycoside concentration should be monitored during the therapy. And some practitioners do not recommend aminoglycosides in cats due to the risk of the very high toxicity. That's about the toxicity and drug interactions. Of course, many times these drugs like the diuretics should not be induced, should not be used because it has got very high risk and it should not be used with inhalant anesthetics or the neuromuscular blocking drugs like the D-tubocurarine. And we can also see the cardiovascular depression, and it is having the synergistic bacterial antibacterial activity with penicillins, especially the beta-lactam antibiotics. So the cephalosporins and these aminoglycosides should not be used because they may cause additive nephrotoxic effect. So the carbanicillin, ticarcillin, and piperacillin should not be used with aminoglycosides because they activate the aminoglycosides and also the renal failure will be there. So the tomorrow onwards we will see the clinical uses of this particular antibiotics are concerned. So just wait on, I will just take the attendance.